Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm David, account executive here in Scorebuddy. I'll be your host as we explore how we're going to create our wow moments that elevate customer experiences and empower teams. Today we'll cover key topics such as the power of active listening, using empathy as a coaching tool, and the transformational coaching techniques. Each of these play a vital role in fostering meaningful interactions and driving high performance within contact centers. And I'm thrilled that I'm not alone today. I'm joined by expert speakers, Patricia Byron and Janelle Udson, who bring a wealth of experience and insight. They're going to help me by sharing practical strategies, real world examples, and actionable tips that you can apply straight away. So let's get started. Ladies, I'll let you introduce yourselves.
Thanks, David. So my name is Patricia Byron and I'm based in Ireland. I'm a leadership lecturer and an executive coach, and I work with individuals and with teams from a coaching perspective to help them build high performance teams, to build motivation, to build self-awareness, and to make the environment that people are working in a nicer environment to work in. So I support both managers, leaders, and individuals themselves around the whole concept of coaching. So I'm here today. I feel like a bit like Troy McClure. You may have seen me from a previous video that we did on strengths-based coaching back in 2024. And I know that Scorebuddy did a fantastic support document to go with that. So if you haven't got it, do reach out and get that. So that's me. Fáilte from Ireland. Thank you. Thanks. Over to you, Janelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janelle Udison. I work for PMI as a quality assurance supervisor in customer support. I've been there for about 3 years now, and I have about 10 years of experience managing quality assurance teams. So I'm excited to be able to contribute today with some real world examples and tips for coaching.
Thank you so much for that. So before we dive into the first topic as well, I just want to again thank everyone for joining us today. We've got people from all over the world. So we've got obviously a large chunk from the US, the UK. We've got a small representative from here in Ireland, and we have some of our friends and customers in South Africa as well. So hello to everybody that's on today's call. I suppose, look, for our industry breakdown as well, very similar to kind of our main verticals here in Scorebuddy. We have our financial services represented in yellow, technology, healthcare, retail, and then just a join up of other industries. Here's our lovely slide just representing ourselves. And I suppose topic one. Okay, so in this first topic, we're going to explore a crucial element of delivering the exceptional customer experiences. This is the power of active listening. Active listening is more than just hearing words. It's about understanding the customer's pain points, responding with empathy, and this approach helps businesses personalize solutions and build stronger, more meaningful relationships. It's also beneficial for internal teams by fostering a culture of clear, attentive communication, driving both collaboration and customer satisfaction. And look, that's what a lot of us are here for today. So let's dive into it. Let's discuss how we're going to help your organization create those wow moments. And Patricia, we'll start with yourself if you'd like to dive in and get the ball rolling.
Great, thanks, David. So I'm not here today to talk to you about how to listen. You listen with this, and we've got two of these and one of those. That's old style thinking. I want you to think deeper about how, as a manager, you're maybe listening to your team and how you're demonstrating that. And as a manager listening to your team and you demonstrate what good looks like, they in turn can demonstrate it when they're dealing with the customers. Unfortunately, an awful lot of people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. And for a lot of you who may have come across the late great Stephen Covey, this was one of his favourite sayings, because he said, people are either speaking or preparing to speak, or they're already filtering in their head, what they think the other person's going to say. So they're already filtering everything through their own paradigm, their own view of the world. I'm encouraging you all to listen with the intent to understand. So listening with the intent to understand means that you're listening for the words that either your team member are using, or you're listening to what words they're not using. So if I was to give you an example, and we use this an awful lot in coaching, so for all the coaches in the room, you'll be familiar with this. So this is just a refresher for you. But very often when I'm doing a one-to-one and I'm listening to what the other person is saying, I'm not only listening to the words they're using, I'm listening to what they're not saying. When I ask them a question, how are they responding to it? How are they walking around it? Are they not observing it? Are they not answering it directly? So what is it they're not saying? And then you have to have the courage to check in with that. So you have to have the courage to say, I noticed I asked you about what that means, and you went off and repeated something else. So you're going back to them and you're saying, okay, what is really going on here? Because very often, and when we look at the neuroscience around the way we think, very often our thinking comes from the back of our head, the cortex area of our head, which is kind of the filing cabinet. It's where we kind of have those stock answers, oh yeah, no, nothing's wrong with me. No, I'm grand. I'm fine. No, yeah, okay. As a coach, what you help to do, and as somebody who's maybe dealing with customers, is you try to get the thinking to come from here, the very front, the prefrontal cortex, the area where we do our deeper thinking. So when we are there, we're talking to our teams and we're listening to them. There's a couple of things, suggestions, a couple of tips that I would give you. So the first one is Stephen Covey's: listen with the intent to understand, not with the intent to reply. Now that's going to take focus, because what you've got to do is when somebody's talking, you've got to stop jumping ahead. One of the tips to do that is literally listen with your eyes. So stay focused on the individual. Watch them. Watch their facial expression. When you ask them a question, watch what they're doing with their eyes. Are they looking up and thinking? Are they looking down and remembering? That way you can tap on and tap in to whatever's going on that they're not saying. So listen with your eyes. Watch their body language. Watch things like their hand over their mouth. Watch things like their hand touching their nose. All of these are little body language tips which enable you to understand what's going on inside. Now, we all do it instinctively. In fact, as children, when we were born, because we couldn't speak, we were brilliant at body language. We were brilliant knowing what's going on. Any of you who have animals, dogs or cats, your dogs or cats know when you're going out for a walk. They know when you're leaving them. Why? Because it's a pattern of behavior. So I'm asking you now, when you're listening to your team, is start listening to patterns of behavior. For example, let me give it to you in a social setting. You might have a group of friends, you know them fairly well, and you say to them, okay, let's go out for dinner tonight. Where will we go? One person might say, I'd love to go for a pizza. And the other person says, I don't want to go for Chinese. There's a very, very distinct difference there. I'm wondering, can you notice it? I'd love to go for pizza. I definitely don't want to go for Chinese. As human beings, depending on our personality, We either respond by moving towards something or moving away from something. So when you say to your team member, what have your successes been this year? And they say, oh, do you know, I've been really challenged. Check in with that. Ask yourself, why are they bringing that up first? Why is that what they're leading with? And please feel free, David, I know that we have a chat facility here, so please feel free to drop in any questions that you might have. So I'm talking about active listening, listening with the intent to understand rather than reply. Listen with your eyes, watch the body language, listen to the verbal cues that your team are giving you, what they're not saying, and also what they are saying. So that move towards or move away. The other thing that I would suggest when we're actually listening is that we don't make assumptions. So we don't make an assumption that, oh, I know what they're going to say here. Oh, I know the answer to this. So again, when you're dealing with your team, or even when you're dealing with a customer, don't make an assumption that their issue or problem is the same issue and problem that you've had 10 times ago, and sure, you just give the answer. What we can also see when it comes to listening, so listen with your eyes, intend to understand rather than reply, listen to the body language, the move in, the move away. The other thing is when you're listening and you're hearing a negative approach, one of the tips is to reframe that for somebody. When we talk about reframing, it's, you know, somebody on your team might say, oh, I'm really, really struggling and I didn't do this very well. Reframing that is, you did other things really well and here's your opportunity for growth. So again, it's rather than saying to somebody, we didn't do that well, you're showing them where there's opportunity for growth. Rather than somebody saying, oh, I haven't got to that yet, and I didn't get to that, and I didn't get to this. Your team member listen to that and say, okay, well, tell me all the things you have got to. So again, it's taking that approach, and these tips will really, they're just a way of working, your way of working, and it really does make a difference. I'm just conscious of the time there because my timer didn't go off. Janelle, do you want to jump in there with any examples that you might have of that?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing, especially working in a remote work environment, is to making sure your cameras are on. That's something new, especially for my team. A lot of us, have not necessarily always been on camera for meetings, so especially during coaching sessions, to ensure that we have our camera on so you can see the body language, you can see what's going on, you can see if someone's thinking, because sometimes tones might not necessarily come across as well. Just listening to someone's voice, you can't necessarily hear their intent. Another big thing, active listening while you're coaching is just like we do with our customers, is to make sure we ask questions about what they're saying, confirm our understanding, just ask those probing questions to make sure that we're listening. Another thing for active listening while coaching is really removing distractions. So I know for myself, I sit and fidget. I fidget while I listen, so it just makes me focus and pay more attention, and just removing, turn off the emails while you're in those one-on-ones and coaching so you can really dive in and fully pay attention to the person that you're coaching to. Another thing is, take notes. So you make sure that you're actively listening and participating in that conversation. That way, you can always go back to it if you need to, but really just so you're, honing in and paying attention, and really giving that person your undivided attention. David, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, look, obviously I'm part of the new business team in Scorebuddy, and I find, look, we have customer calls on a regular basis, and body language and kind of facial expressions, you really kind of rely on it to, see where the conversation's going, kind of how is this going for me, between obviously from myself and a prospective client. And I really feel like it helps build a relationship as well, based on the limited kind of contact that you have with the clients. And I thought it was really interesting as well. Patricia, you made the point about assumptions, because that's something I'm always conscious of as well. If I just assume that every time I jump on a call, that I'm assuming, oh, everybody has challenges with reporting, everybody has, everyone's workload is too manual. It'd be very easy for me to make an assumption that everybody has the same problems. But what people do forget is everybody's so different. We're dealing with different people from different backgrounds, whether it's in the office or dealing with different clients, but people evolve, challenges evolve. We can't just make the same assumptions. And I thought that was a really good point. Janelle, you also mentioned notes as well. Like I think I've written 3 little pages already just while we're on the webinar. That's always something that helps me kind of understand, not just remember, but really understand what somebody's saying as well while we're talking. So that's kind of some of the points I just wanted to throw in and add as well.
Thanks, David. One of the things, and it's just Janelle has triggered it for me, is we show somebody that we're listening when we actually reflect back the words that they use. So if somebody says to you, I think this is going to happen, they come from that paradigm of logic and thinking. So you reflect that back to them. Tell me more about what you think. Or you may have somebody who says, I feel. And again, they come from a different paradigm. They come from a different way of thinking. So there's the thinking and the feeling. And to connect with somebody, you reflect back the words that they use for a real deep connection. The other thing, and I'll finish up with this, is whether you're dealing with a customer or you're dealing with a team member or you're dealing with your young kids or your partner or your family, avoid saying to somebody, so what you said was, avoid that. Instead, operate on the basis of what I hear is. Because that allows the other person to say to you, actually, no, you've got that wrong. This is what I meant. So it's a really good tip, and it's one that I use an awful lot, especially when things are tense, or it's a critical conversation. Rather than saying, so what you're saying is, I say to people what I have heard. And for me, that's the key with active listening.
Yeah, it's a massive, massive difference. And look, you were touching on the feelings side of it there as well, Patricia. And I think it's a really good segue for our second kind of topic for today, which is wow with empathy. So empathy, it's a powerful way to humanize these interactions and develop emotionally intelligent teams and contact centers. Empathy goes way beyond solving problems. It's about truly understanding those emotions and those experiences of both customers and team members. With managers, like when managers coach with empathy, they foster a supportive environment where agents feel valued, they feel motivated to provide a more authentic, compassionate customer care. By building the emotional intelligence within teams as well, organizations can improve communication. They can reduce conflict, and they can create meaningful connections that benefit both employees and customers alike. So, Janelle, coming to you first on this one, can you kind of talk us through how empathy can become a key coaching strategy to elevate both individual and organizational success?
Absolutely. So empathy is a huge part of coaching and customer service. And this has been a lot of stuff that we've been working through with my team as well. Really making an effort to get to know somebody on a personal level can really help you empathize and understand what's going on for them. So I can use an example. Say Rhonda was taking a phone call, but Rhonda has this very specific tone about her. But if you don't know Rhonda, that's just how Rhonda talks. But maybe, so Rhonda, this is how you're coming off to a customer, but maybe let's talk about, put it in Rhonda's shoes. okay, this is how I talk. Well, how can we show the customer that's not how you intend, and how can we change the inflection in your voice? Really getting to know the person you're coaching can really help bridge that gap between, this is my QA feedback for you, and this is, what the customers are saying, but I know you. I know that's not what you mean. How can we bridge that gap and really understand how we can come to work together? Another big piece that my team does is trying to put ourselves in the agent's shoes as well. So our QA team does take live contacts per month, and they're the ones that coach the agents as well. So making sure that they're staying empathetic and understanding what that agent experience is like has been really key, a key program element for us as well. I'm going to pass it over to Patricia. I know you have a lot, and I'm happy to jump in.
Great, thanks. That's really interesting examples, Janelle, because it feeds into what I'm saying. Again, if I was to give a quote, Brené Brown says that rarely a response makes something better when somebody is struggling, or they're in a negative frame of mind, or whatever, or something has happened to them, and rarely a response makes anything better. But what does make something better is connecting. And that's what empathy is about. Empathy is connecting. And there's a big difference between sympathy and empathy. I don't want you, for me, and I was actually only talking to a family member, myself, the other day, and I had a really, really bad headache. And they were saying to me, oh, I feel really sorry for you. Oh, that's terrible. You have a really bad headache. I feel really sorry for you. And I'm kind of going, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't want your sympathy. What I would love is that you understand what that means for me right at this moment in time. And that's the difference. Empathy means that you experience the other person's feelings, and you kind of go, oh, that's tough. That must be tough. You've got a headache. That must be tough. Let's just sit in silence. Let's just calm everything down. Rather than, oh, you poor thing. Oh, that's terrible. Anyway, let's move on. So be aware of the difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy takes you making a connection with the person, whether it's your call staff or whether it's your customer. And sometimes, especially when we're coaching a team member, sometimes it's just really, really hard not to say something. Because as human beings, that's what we want to do. We want to, make it better. And I ask you to remember Brené Brown's quote, which is, rarely a response makes anything better. Sitting in silence and saying, that sounds tough. How can I support you? What do you need from me? That shows empathy. And showing empathy then builds connections. And building connections builds a couple of things. Building connections builds loyalty. It builds commitment. It builds strength. So if you're able to show a connection with your team or your customer, you are influencing them without even realizing it, because that connection is there. Now layer that empathy over active listening, and suddenly, wow, you are making strong connections. You're actively listening. You're reflecting back to the person the language they're using. You're not making assumptions. You're not judging. And now you're not saying, oh, that's terrible. As what actually happened to me was a family member turned around and said, oh, that's terrible that you've got a headache. At least you don't have to go and do a presentation this afternoon. And I'm thinking, the at least trap is the worst trap you can have. At least doesn't make it any better. At least just diminishes anything that went before it. So when you say to somebody, oh, you got a puncture, but at least you could have done this. No, that doesn't make me feel any better. So avoid, if the tip I give you with empathy is avoid the at least trap. Instead you could say, oh wow, I relate to that. Oh wow, that sounds tough. Or wow, you must be going through a particularly difficult time at the moment. I've been through that myself. I can understand what you're going through. I'm thinking of you. I'm giving you some support. So that is empathy. Sympathy is, oh, you poor thing. Well, at least, at least this didn't happen. Janelle, just before we move on, anything else? Any other thoughts?
I think another thing too that I wanted to add was when coaching kind of empathy and active listening, also it's assuming positive intent from the person that you're coaching, no matter the thing that you're coaching them on, but really just coming in with a good intent and have that positive mindset kind of going into it really changes your perspective and your attitude and everything that it comes to coaching that person.
Yeah.
David, I just noticed there's a question in there.
Yeah, do you want to jump to them now?
Yeah, if that's okay, just before we move on to the next session, and obviously we can ask, answer questions at the end as well. But the question was regarding the tips regarding empathy. What is the best way to help agents understand that it goes beyond just apologizing? Additionally, when is it appropriate to offer an apology? Sometimes excessive apologies can frustrate customers. I love the question. I just love it. It's a brilliant question because it shows me that the person who's posed the question understands the importance of it. Sometimes people don't want you to solve their problems, but they do want to know that you've heard them.
Mhm.
So empathy, you don't need to say, oh, I apologize that happened. Oh, I'm sorry that happened. Or that was my colleague. Like that's the worst thing is apologizing and saying, oh, it was somebody else's fault, or apologizing and saying, but nobody else has complained about that. That's the wrong approach. And sometimes it's kind of like, I hear your frustration. I probably would have been frustrated if that happened to me as well. What can I do to support you? What can we do to resolve this? So it's not apologizing. It's going back to the sympathy. Oh, I'm sorry you've got a headache. It's not that apologizing. It's that sounds frustrating. I hear you. What can we do to support you? So hopefully that answers that question.
I just want to add a little thing in here too. What I like to tell the agents is like, how would you like to be responded to if you were a customer having this problem? Really put them in the customer shoes and how it's really that personal element that you want to customer service. How would you want to be responded to? I always like to throw the question back on the agent too when trying to get that empathy, understanding, and real world examples. And in real life, if you were the customer and you were frustrated, how would you want to be like, I understand your problem. Let's see, what can we do to resolve it? Or here's my resolution for you, or here's what I'm going to do for you next. It's really important.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Yeah.
And David, on the next slide, we just have those few tips. So a thing that I suggest to cultivate an empathy in the workplace is also to be watch out for signs of burnout in other people. You'll see it in absenteeism. You will see it in reduced motivation. You will see it in paralysis by analysis. You will see where people are just overthinking things. It's possibly because they're burnt out. So show sincere interest in the needs, hopes, and dreams of your team. Demonstrate a willingness to help the employee with if they have a problem. You don't have to take that problem on, but demonstrate a willingness even just to listen to them. And also show compassion when other people disclose a personal loss. And a personal loss doesn't have to mean a death, a bereavement. A personal loss can be anything. Loss means different things to different people. Okay.
It's interesting on that point, Patricia, as well. Your first tip there. I was at a contact center gathering in Google there last year, And someone stood up in the crowd when they were talking about empathy and talking about, how they support the staff, and it was said, look, it's so easy to say you're just there to, you're offering staff a wonderful environment and you're just, supporting them when possible. But they asked for, like, what's a true indicator or something you go after or look for to see who really needs to, who needs our support, like kind of tipping back into the first topic and trying to read between the lines what people aren't saying. And to your point, what they look at, one of the first things they look at when they're trying to see, how happy our staff here with us is how many sick days people take. It's so if you have more sick days than others, they try and, bring you in, see, is everything okay? Everything all right? Are you happy in the job? Is there something we could be doing different? And having those kind of emotionally intelligent conversations rather than just, oh, he's obviously checked out, let them just keep going down that slippery slope. So it's, I find it really interesting you mentioned that as one of your tips. And if it's okay, I'd love to throw in as well, and then if there's any other last points, we can move on to the final topic. I used to work in a Marriott hotel, and it always kind of stuck with me as well. We would have daily meetings, and little bits that we have to remember today, and maybe important guests that were checking in and so on. But we used to finish every meeting with like a typical JW Marriott quote, that is, if you take care of your people, they'll take care of your customers. And I was working there maybe 11, 12, 13 years ago, and it's still ringing in my ear that if you do take care of your staff, if you do pay that kind of extra bit of attention, if you can go the extra mile for them, they'll go the extra mile for you. And it's still, to this day, it's still so true.
Brilliant, David. And that actually leads us on to the next wow moment, that way of working. So we're talking about wow moments being your way of working, and the wow moment with the power of persuasion. David?
Yeah, so look, this third and final topic, thanks Patricia, is transformational coaching and persuasion. And to your point, it is powerful. It's a powerful approach to empower agents and to elevate customer conversations. So the idea here is that we're going to explore techniques that can go beyond traditional coaching, helping agents build confidence, develop persuasive communication skills. And by adopting this transformative approach, we can help organizations unlock higher levels of performance and customer engagement. Janelle, I know you're going to jump in on this one as well. We will start with yourself, Patricia, but we're looking to share, obviously, then real life success stories, practical insights that can help our listeners today create a high performance coaching framework that drives both individual and, again, business success. So, Patricia, back to yourself.
Yeah, great. Thank you, David. So we've talked today, and I'm really delighted with some of the interaction we've got on the chat. So please do, if you've any more questions, do post them. But we talked about listening, we talked about empathy, and now, as David said, and the experience he had with Marriott Hotel, we're talking about the power of persuasion. And again, for an awful lot of you, there is you may have come across Robert Cialdini, excuse me, butchering that. That no, David, we can stop sharing that. That's it. That's all. Is Robert Cialdini. You can please excuse me for butchering his surname. But he came up with the power of persuasion, and basically what he talks about is that there's six secrets to the power of persuasion. I'm not going to give you all six. I could name them off, but I'm looking at three of them. And three of them, the first one is the one that David mentioned, which is reciprocity. Excuse me, but I'm a dyslexic, so it takes me a while when there's more than three syllables to a word. So it's reciprocity. The other thing then is likability and consistency. And funny enough, when it comes to coaching, that's really important as well. So there has to be a connection there for you to persuade somebody. And there's a difference between persuasion and influencing. So again, let me just be very clear with this. Influencing is where you actually change someone's choice. But persuasion is where you change the underlying belief that governs that choice. Okay? So let me give you an example. You are saying to your team member, okay, I want you to look after this project. And you're pushing them to look after a particular client or a particular project, and you're trying to influence them to do it, right? And you might be saying things like, oh, this is a brilliant opportunity for you. This is fantastic. This is what you should be doing. This is what you should be doing. If the relationship with your team member is good, that will work. You'll be able to influence them, and you'll get the, oh, okay, I'll take that on that role, or I'll take on that client, or I'll take on that job. And you've influenced them. Persuasion is different. Persuasion is where you may get initial pushback from your team members. Oh, no, I can't really do that. And you then get into the underlying belief as to why they feel they can't do that, why they don't want to take on that role, why they don't want to do that. That brings you to a different level of influencing. It brings you to the secret of persuasion. And there's loads of research out there. But when we persuade somebody or we influence somebody to take a particular option, to take a particular route, or to move in a particular way, when we do it with the 6 secrets that Cialdini talks about, which is consistency, reciprocity, likability, scarcity, so on and so forth, when we use those tools, it becomes embedded. It becomes a new way that person works, thinks, behaves. Janelle, could I, what's your thoughts around the power of persuasion?
No, this is a topic I was a little unsure how much I could participate in, but I know, like, listening to what you're saying as well, what we like to do with agents is, if there's a lot of, let's say, for example, a lot of issues on a scorecard, we say, hey, can you review the contact that you take, and kind of put it in their hands and say, hey, what are you seeing? And then say, really come together, hey, this is what I see. And then if they're still not getting it, maybe show them an example of, this is the difference in this customer interaction where this person did this, and this is the turnout for the customer, and this is a CSAT score, really kind of putting it in the power of the agent's hands, kind of showing, these are my examples, this is why I'm showing this reasoning, and this is the turnout if you do it correctly, how that can affect, our customer interactions, etc. I was just looking at my notes, sorry. I think you got me a good example.
And that's a really good example. So there's 2 ways to persuade and to influence. There is the pull and there is the push. So there's 2 ways of persuasion. What we see is the pull method is used when there's a great relationship there and there's trust built up, and you're getting into underlying, what are the beliefs, what are the issues going on for the person, what is causing them this concern, what is causing them this problem. And what you're doing is you're delving and you're pulling information from them. Okay, so that type of pull approach is really, really good when there's a relationship there. Sometimes we also see a push approach, and a push approach is, look, here's the way to do it. This is what we've seen. This is what the stores are saying. And so we can persuade either by pushing or pulling. If you want to make a difference with your team member, or if you want to make a difference with your customer, if you use active listening and you use empathy, they will give you the signals as to whether to push or to pull. So, for example, if somebody said to me, this day next week, I'm going to have you doing a bungee jump off the Sydney Opera House. Not in a million years. I don't care what you say to me. You are never going to influence me to do that. Never going to influence me to do that. And what I've had is maybe people go, oh, it's brilliant, it's fantastic, it's this, it's that, you'll just love it. No, you're not going to influence me. My mind is made up. Don't confuse me with facts. That would be the push approach. Oh, but it's brilliant. It's a once in a lifetime chance. You're going to love it. You'll never get to do it again. You're going to get photographs. You're going to be able to share it. I'm not interested. You're not going to influence me to change my choice. If, however, you say to me, do you like doing stuff that's exciting? Oh, yeah. Do you like doing stuff that's outside your comfort zone? Oh, yeah, I really like that. Yeah. Do you enjoy doing something different? Oh, I love doing something different. Have you ever considered jumping off the Sydney Opera House in a bungee jump? Oh, no, I wouldn't be doing that. So tell me a little bit more about what's stopping you. What are you afraid of? What's your biggest fear? Now we're starting to get to that, changing that underlying belief. Am I explaining this properly? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now we're getting to changing that underlying belief. And very often when that happens, the person kind of goes, actually, do you know what? I don't know what's stopping me do this. I don't know what's stopping me taking on that project. I don't know what's stopping me being more assertive with my customers. I don't know what's stopping me doing this. So you're getting deep in with them. So, and with Cialdini, there's three things: likability, reciprocity, and consistency that I would say as a team leader, watch out for. So be consistent in your approach. So when you're dealing with your team, make sure there's consistency across the approach. And that type of fairness shows in your ability to influence and persuade. As David was saying earlier on in the Marriott Hotel, be the first to give. So be the first to support, be the first to help. And likability is brilliant. You got to be able to make a connection with your team. You got to be able to make a connection with the customer. All right. The only thing I would say, and I would leave on this tip, is the warning when it comes to likability, that we all have a tendency towards liking people who are like us. And then if we're only responding in a particular way to people who are like us, well, then we're not being consistent. So regardless of whether you think, oh gosh, this person, oh no, I know what this person's going to be like, it doesn't matter. You treat everybody in the same way. And that builds up your power of your influence, your power of your persuasion, and creates really good wow moments.
Amazing.
David, I think.
Yeah, look, Patricia, you've given me a great idea for our next webinar. I think we'll be doing it off the top of the Sydney Opera House for the next one. But no, I appreciate it. And look, you've given me a couple of things to think of as well. And I love the way the two of you brought the first two topics into this third and final topic as well, and how important they are. Look, from my own experience, I've been in customer care or customer experience in one way or another for the best part of the last 20 odd years, and I thought I had it cracked by showing empathy, by listening. But if you don't have some of those other points that you said as well, it's all for nothing. So it really needs to be the full package to understand where someone is coming from, to really, to be able to listen to them, actively listen to them, and to care. And again, I thought I had it cracked until I had two children, and then I can't persuade them to do anything. So I've work to do. Before we jump into some of the other questions that have come in, I want to encourage people that are on, and again, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any other questions, please pop them into the chat right now. We'll read them out and we'll go through them. We still have a couple of minutes left. Patricia, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, could I just ask if people wouldn't mind, because it's really useful for us and for me, is what was the one thing that landed with you today? What was the one thought that landed with you today? What is the one thing that's going to make a difference? If anything, that you're taken away and thought, oh gosh, yeah, I knew that and I just forgot about it. Or, oh, well, that's a different take on it. It would be really useful for us that even if you don't have a question to ask, that you just drop in that one little takeaway. That would be just fantastic.
Amazing.
Thanks, David.
Lovely points. Okay, so if I can go to this first question, and this one's actually for yourself, Patricia. So they say, I completely agree that when addressing customer issues, even if they appear similar to previous tickets, it is crucial to fully understand and clarify their requests. In your opinion, Patricia, do pre-made macros for agents hinder this goal? It seems that using pre-made responses has become the most common approach when dealing with similar issues requests, and they'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
So I could go on about this for an hour, so I'm not going to. Okay. Pre-made macros, pre-made responses are great. Okay, they're really helpful, especially when somebody goes, "Oh gosh, question, how am I going to respond to this?" But what really makes a difference is to instill a sense of curiosity in your agents.
Mm.
So yes, give them the support of the pre-prepared answers. I assume that's what we're talking about here, pre-prepared answers. So give them the support of the pre-prepared answers, but don't turn them into robots. Give them the power to be curious and to say, "Oh, tell me a little bit more about that," and teach them to shut up. Tell me a little bit more about that. How's that impacting? That sounds frustrating. Bring in the empathy. So the one word that I would suggest that everybody takes out of their vocabulary from today, and the one word I would suggest that you encourage your agents to take out of their vocabulary, is why.
Mm.
That small 3-letter word, why, and the other word, but. Encourage your agents to take that out of their vocabulary. Why are you saying that? Why did that happen? Find a different way to approach the word why. What's the benefit? Tell me more about that. And the but. Oh, I can understand that you're frustrated, but there's nothing we can do. Or I can understand you're frustrated, but I can't get you an answer till the end of the week. Instead, get them to flip it, and instead of using the word but, they use the word and, which is, I can understand your frustration and I can get this resolved by the end of the week. I think it was Game of Thrones. Wasn't it Game of Thrones? Anybody who's Game of Thrones fan said anything before the but is a lie. Anyway, there we go. David, sorry, carry on with the questions if there's any.
I want to add something in too, if you don't mind. A big thing that we say, we can use macros or pre-scripted responses, but the biggest thing is to personalize them to the customer, so we don't come off to the as robots and kind of just that copy paste response, to show that we're actively listening to them as well. Use their name, use their problem, give them scripts, but make sure that they can edit it and have that freedom to personalize and empathize within that response as well.
Lovely. I just want to do a quick shout out. I saw that 2 of those questions came in from 2 lovely people that I've been dealing with in the past from the wonderful company Preply. So I just want to do a quick shout out to you both. We've got some takeaways that are being shared with us as well. So here's one from Caroline. Caroline's takeaway: sometimes people don't want you to fix their problem. They just want to know that you hear them. I think that is a very powerful one. Rochelle, to avoid the least trap and to be consistent and likable, and to dig deeper, Rochelle continued on by saying. A question here from Piak. Hopefully I pronounced the name correctly. Apologies if I didn't. Can you please give a couple of recommendations on how better to calm a team during times of overload at work using empathy? And then said, thank you very much. So anybody want to take that?
So what I'm hearing is, how can you calm a team during periods of overwork and overload?
Correct.
Yep. So again, it's communicating. It's communicating. It's communicating. The great Irish poet called George Bernard Shaw says the biggest illusion about communication is the fact that it had taken place. We think we're communicating with our team and we actually aren't. So it's constant. When your team feels overwhelmed, it's constant communicating with them. I know this is a tough time. I know we're all feeling frustrated. I know calls have gone up. I know, this is what's going to happen. It's just constantly communicating with them. Would you agree, Janelle?
That is that as well as being transparent in your communication. So like understanding, like give them as much information as you're able to, depending on the situation. Just make sure that you're just being, full understanding, transparent, and communicate well.
I suppose not being afraid to communicate and not be afraid to like step up in those hard moments as well. And you know, when people are tired and they're overworked or overloaded, not being afraid to address the elephant in the room, give people that extra bit of push. And like you said, an assumption came up earlier on, not just assuming that everybody is okay and assuming that everyone's absolutely delighted to be doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. Yeah, but so to give the troops, I suppose, a positive message and enforcement that I'm here for you. I'm here for the support. If you need anything, feel free to communicate back as well. So that it's a two-way side.
And
There
one
are
add,
a number. Oh, go for it, please. Yeah, go for
sorry.
it.
Another thing too is make sure, obviously, you communicate as a team, but individually in your one-on-one, say, "Hey, I know work is busy right now. How are you doing with that?" Really understanding, empathize with their situation, help them, give them whatever tools they need to be able to handle that workload better.
Yeah, and look, you're making me think now. It where I suppose with the overload and the workload, that can go both ways. So if there are managers that are on today's call and calendars are absolutely jam packed and they need to even move one-to-ones, it can obviously be a very sensitive topic because it may be like it's just another one-to-one. I can move that and that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that you're communicating that with the team as well, that like this is important to me as it is important to you. Something has come up. Just keeping that level of communication for those one-to-ones, because it may seem like you've got 20 one-to-ones to do this week and it may just be another one-to-one to you, but for that agent, for that team member, that's a big time of the week for them, having that chance to communicate with you, hearing from you just on a one-to-one basis, but also being able to offload as well. um, and that's not directed at my manager at all. That's just for any of the managers that are on today's call. um, there is a question that's coming up, and Patricia, I'll come to you now in 1 second. There's a question that's coming up again and again, just in terms of the recording. Yes, we will be looking to share today's recording for anyone that wasn't on today's call. We will have your contact details yourself from signing up, and we'll make sure to get you a copy of the recording. Patricia.
No, that's it. And I think if it just building on what you've said, David, and Janelle, it's around understanding. We've talked about wow moments here, our ways of working, and it's around habit. So it's getting into good habits. So, like David said, there will be times where you might have to cancel a one-to-one, but make sure you're openly communicating with your team member with empathy and saying to them, I understand this might be frustrating, and it's not, it's not that I don't value our time together. So how do you feel about this? Is that okay? This builds connection. This builds, connection, and connection is what it's all about. So when we talk about wow moments, we're actually talking about ways of working. And ways of working mean active listening, listening with the intent to understand, not reply, empathy rather than sympathy, and focus on your persuasion and influencing skills. And ask yourself, am I pushing here or should I be pulling? So for me, that's kind of what I would leave you with today.
Patricia, thank you
Thanks,
so
Dave.
much. Janelle, any final parting wisdom before we wrap up?
I think Patricia did a great job.
Yeah, sorry, I know that's a tough act to follow, so apologies. I want to thank you both, first of all, because today would have been a very short, boring webinar if it was just me. So I really appreciate the both of you taking time to join me today, the preparation that it took coming into today's webinar as well. So thank you so much. I really mean that. I want to thank everybody that took the time to join us, because if it was just the three of us, it would have been a very fun chat, but we wouldn't be sharing anything with anyone. So thank you so much, everyone who took the time, and my colleague Lauren in the background who helped organize this. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Have a good day.